Alright guys, so what we're going to do in this video is we're going to revisit the old site we were using, or that we made, and we're going to talk about a few different CSS styles in this video, and whichever ones come up first really. So let's go ahead and create a header with the ID of main header. Let's close that element here. And then in here, we're going to just put an H1 element, which is going to be best news ever. And this is the name of the site. I'm going to save this and refresh. Awesome. Now, I'm going to talk about fonts for a moment because fonts are a very, very important part of a website. And so we're going to talk about importing them and then the CSS rules to apply to use them. So, I want you guys to go on over to fonts.google.com, and here you can browse fonts, you can navigate, you can filter and specify what kind of fonts you want. I am going for the classic Roboto condensed. So all you do is click the plus sign beside the font title, and then you're going to get this right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Customize, and I'm going to include light and bold. You can also include italics if you want, but I'm not going to do that. And then we're going to go to Embed, the Embed tab here, and rather than using standard, we're going to use import. And the reason is because we can keep this directly into the style sheet. So let's copy this and paste it right here. So what an import rule does in a style sheet, and it looks like that copied it. Okay, cool. It's weird. It wouldn't go left or right. All right, so what an import rule does, that doesn't look right, does it? Where's the @ sign? Oh, there it is. That's so weird. It's not scrolling properly. All right. It lets you import different stuff, basically. You can import style sheets, fonts, etc. So we're going to import this font right here, and then how you apply that, and we're going to apply it to the entire body. So you just open up the rule here, and you type font-family, and here we specify in single quotes or double quotes, whichever you want to do, the name of the font we want to use. So in this case, it's Roboto condensed. And then you can put a comma and specify if this font can't be loaded, what one do we want to use in place of that? And I'm going to say sans serif, which is the font that doesn't have all the curly, it doesn't have all the curly edges and stuff. So I'm going to refresh, and we're going to see that Roboto condensed is in fact loaded in here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set the font weight, and this is basically how thick the letters are. It's either going to be bold, regular, or light, but you specify in numbers. So 300 is light. Save it and refresh, and it didn't take effect here because the H1 element is it has its own font weight. See, this isn't applied here. So what we would have to do is either add an important tag, which we're not going to. Well, let's talk about that. If you want a rule to absolutely be applied to an element regardless of specificity, you're going to use the exclamation mark important. And this is going to mean that this does not get overridden by anything except for if something is more specific, then we're going to obviously have it overwritten if it uses the important tag. So what we need to do is go body, H1, font weight, 300. Save, refresh, there we go. We've got a light font because we targeted it correctly. Now, what I'm going to do is this main header, we're going to style that up using a bit of padding, margin, and a border. So I'm going to show you guys how to target an ID. How we've targeted things so far in CSS has been just with the element name. However, you can also target by class name or ID. And how you do that, if it's an ID, you use a hash symbol, and then you type out the name of the ID. And this is going to apply the following rules to any element with an ID of that. As you can see, we only have one, and that's because it's an ID. You cannot have multiple elements with the same ID in an HTML document, and additionally, you cannot have more than one ID. This is it. So let's go ahead and apply a rule to the main header. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the border on the bottom. So border takes 3 parameters here. The width of the border, the style of the border, and then the color of the border. So this is going to apply it to all sides of the element. So if I say 1 pixel solid black, save it and refresh, you can see that we've got a border around the entire thing. Now you can also do dotted and dashed. And this would be, if you were creating a coupon for something that you have on your website, you would maybe put this around it, and if people actually cut that coupon out of their screen, that would be pretty funny. Terrible as well. So again, with the margin and padding rules, you could do border, or you could do margin and then margin top and then margin bottom. You can do the same thing here. So if we want no border on the top, we would say border top none. Save, refresh, and now there's no border on the top. Or if you only want to apply a border to one side, use the single side rule. So border bottom is going to be 2 pixels solid black. Save it, refresh. There we go. That's the kind of border that I want. Now, another issue that you guys can probably see is that around the body element, there's a margin which prevents this border from reaching both ends of the screen. And we need to remove that. So body margin is going to be 0 pixels. There we go. Now it extends all the way. Now another problem here is that the H1 element has a margin. And so it's further away from the top and the bottom than it is from the left. So we could either add more margin to the left or remove the margin altogether. And that's what I'm going to do. Margin equals none. 0. Margin equals 0. Now we've got this. Now I'm going to add my own margin around it. So I'm going to say, well, here's where DevTools comes in handy. What we can do here is actually play around with CSS in a live environment. So we have the element selected here. And then down here in the style box, let me get rid of the console here altogether. We've got the element.style. This is as if it were applied using inline CSS. So let's go ahead and say margin 10 pixels. See what that looks like. That looks all right. I think we could do better. 20 pixels. Now, what you're going to see is generally, and I'm not sure why this is probably just because of the way that our monitors are currently sized. I remember back in the 90s, my first computer had a 4:3 resolution, and that was pretty standard at the time. I had a Windows 98 machine. It was awesome. And the screen resolution was 640 by 480, which is 4:3. If you were to equally section up your screen, it would be 3 parts high and then 4 parts wide, so it's very proportional. Now, I think we've begun to see that as a square, even though it's not. It's 4:3. It's not 4:4 or 1:1. So this looks weird because it looks like there's not enough space on the left side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 20 pixel margin to the top and bottom, and then 30 pixels to the left and right. And that looks a bit better. So I'm going to copy this rule, jump over here, paste it in here. Now with a margin, you can supply one argument, which is going to affect all sides. If you apply two, how I've done here, the first one is going to apply to the top and bottom, while the second one is going to apply to the left and right. And if you apply 4 values, I think it's left, bottom, right, top, or something like that. Let's find out. So left, 10 pixels. All right. So you've got, it looks, the top one. Okay, so top, right, bottom, left. So let's add 100 here to the bottom, and then 40 to the left. So it goes clockwise. Top, right, bottom, left. I typically don't use this because, I don't know, I just don't. I like things symmetrical anyway. So there we go. That is our header. And that's a bit about borders and margins. Now, with the border, you can actually separate these into separate rules. You can have border dash width. So we can set that to 2 pixels. Border dash color. Set that to 0, 0, 0. And this is useful if you first apply this, for instance. Then if we hover over it, we want only to change one of these. We wouldn't have to completely write out the entire rule. We can just say border color is whatever we want to change the color to. And we'll get more into that as well a bit later on.